Universal Credit, she awaited the first payment and had been doing so expectantly for the last 3 months. The Pooh Bank volunteer delivery driver was quickly becoming a personal friend. The questions of why and how ran through her head. She had left home to avoid the sham of family life. She wanted to go it alone to prove to herself, to her father, that she was something without the apron strings. She had unceremoniously dumped the boyfriend of 5 years and had left her mother devastated. He, meanwhile, had moved on within days, something she wondered whether actually hadn't happened before. She didn't want the sham relationship of her parents. She'd rather be alone than live a lie. So she had left home, found a waitressing job, rented a bedsit from an unscrupulous landlord 350 miles away from her friends. And then COVID-19 lockdown hit. She'd done all the paperwork, but the money had run out and its replacement wasn't turning up. Her father would never understand, for the shame that she had brought upon his image was palpable, and yet the shame he had brought upon her was tangible. She wasn't his daughter in life, in blood, yes, but not in life. They were strangers, and perhaps now they would never see each other again. She wrestled with guilt. Shame of being on handouts, self-doubt assaulted her, but she managed, through it all, to get to work on voluntarily cleaning the other rooms in the bedsit block. She was in a strange town with a strange accent, an inherent racism, loneliness, and here she was going through the most difficult time of growing up with the questions of self-doubt, tiredness, struggling to make it through a day. Life was a whirlwind of depression, hard work, loss of hope, and yet her independence brought such a brightness to life, even in tears of desperation, was an inner joy that was unfathomable. In the quiet moments when she was alone doing the housework or walking around the neighborhood, she began to pray. Not praying for anything, not praying for people, but praying to see God somewhere in the darkness of the world that had so much light. And as she prayed, she began to see that God works in the God forsaken, the dull, the grotesque, the rejected. Her friend Kiyu had prayed and had died young, having led a life where she had been abused, and this had left her not looking for trite vacuum-packed answers, but wrestling with real questions. In the room where she now lived, she had found the Gideon Bible and had started reading it. What inspired her most were the stories of how people had argued with God: Job, Jonah, Jacob, Abraham, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Elijah, Elisha. She wanted to live on the moment, where we don't worry about whys and wherefores, we just live in the moment and give to God that moment. And if we live in the moment, we shall know what to do, to give the child the egg, or the widow the bread. As the Dalai Lama said, why pray to God about atrocities made by humans? Look to yourselves. Life and prayer are one, two sides of a coin, two parts of a cuckoo lesson. She had got somewhere, but it didn't change her physical life. She was still turned away from certain neighborhoods, still lonely, tired, frightened. The Bible opened in her hands, and the story of doubting Thomas was there. The divine was on earth, always had been, and that's what Thomas had doubted. And that was her doubt. The doubt of so many around her, the doubt of so many in the world. How could God be here? How could God allow this to happen? Thomas's doubt was the same doubt of so many 2,000 years later, and Jesus gave his answer. Jesus' answer was not in healing, but in his wounds. Jesus' answer was that God was suffering, and he showed the wounds to give understanding. It is in the wounds that we see God, not in the healing. So God was to be seen in the vulnerable, the grotesque, the absurd, the lonely. In short, God was in the God-forsaken. And as she began to walk the same route daily, it became almost a meditation time, avoiding the 2-meter area, the areas where the 2-meter isolation could be broken. The prayer, the search for God became more deep-rooted, not reactive moments praying for this today and that today, tomorrow ever changing, but rather the search, the single prayer that grew stronger and stronger to see God, to see Christ in the moment. This moment did not reflect on the future or lament the past, but here now, the one thing she could control. And she saw God in those who were despised and the rejected, the outcast. Such was her personality, she no longer saw herself as any of these, she saw herself as blessed, even though the world around her seemed to despise her. Thomas back then doubted the existence of God, and yet, even now, in the very places that were on the news each evening, God was there. For Jesus showed that God is in the wounds of life, not in the healing miracles that seemed unreachable. That was why she liked the story of Thomas. It was rooted in her reality. God, where are you? To which Jesus replied,